ever feel like there are two different versions of you? As in, there's the you who exists out in the world, at work, with your friends, here at church, and then there's the you at home. Let's be honest, the at-home version can be way different than the out there version. For example, out in the world, my husband is the guy who loves the outdoors and lives for college football. At home, well, he's still mostly the same, but he does have one big secret. He loves the Hamilton musical. Like, loves it. I've come home more than a few times to find him listening to the album at full blast. Now, he's quick to point out that Hamilton is hip-hop, but still, I bet he's not rapping about the Battle of Yorktown while he's hanging out with his friends. But we're all like this, right? We all do things at home that we wouldn't do with our friends or at work or in public. Not only are we different at home, but most of us tend to be more difficult at home. Think about it. You'd never leave your socks on the floor at a friend's house, but you may not think twice about doing it at your own house. You'd never talk to your boss the way you talk to your child. You'd never be as blunt to a teammate as you are to your spouse. Generally, we don't lose our cool nearly as quickly with the people outside our home as we do with the people inside. There are probably a lot of reasons for this split personality, but if we were really being honest, I think we'd say this. We tend to think of home as our world, and everybody else is just living in it, right? We wouldn't say that out loud, but we all feel this sense of entitlement. We may walk in the door and want to know if dinner is something we like. We may complain about another family member's plans infringing on our plans. It's our world, and we want it to be our way. But we don't make these kinds of demands anywhere else, right? Most of us wouldn't go to a dinner gathering at a friend's house and say, "Ugh, I hate lasagna. Why'd you make that?" We'd never tell our boss, "We aren't coming to work because he already had other plans." Even if we have a somewhat bad attitude with people at work, it's never to the level we display at home. Maybe that's because home feels like the only place where it feels safe to be the realest version of ourselves. After all, the people we live with will still love us, even when we're at our most ridiculous. But at the same time, we tend not to be just the realest version of ourselves at home, but the worst version of ourselves. At the core of this behavior, I think there's something inside of us that asks this big question: how does this affect me? Think about it. Everything we say or do at home is in response to how that question is answered. How does this affect me? But here's the thing. Our response to that question has a huge impact on the vibe in our home. Because as we respond to how things are affecting us, the other people in our house are responding to how we are affecting them. Then we respond to that response, which means that all of us play a key role in setting the tone in our homes. Now, do we always contribute to a tense environment? No. But for some of us, we know that we're at least a part of the cycle of tension and attitude in our home. So how do we address this? What do you do when things are tough at home or when the mood is off? What do you do when you know you're a part of the reason things are tense, but you have no idea what to do about it? What do you do when you don't know what to do when it's tense at home? I think we can all agree that family is hard. Families have been challenging ever since we've had families in the world. Exhibit A, the Bible. In fact, one of the things I love most about the Bible is how it gives us a real look at real people who lived real lives with real problems. Over the next several weeks, we're going to spend some time looking at the life of Joseph. Now, Joseph lived a lot of life. He was a guy who, just like us, found himself in all kinds of situations where he didn't know what to do. Plus, Joseph's story is wild. It's like the most dramatic Netflix show you've never seen. There are murder plots, he's unfairly put in jail, the story twists and turns everywhere, and the drama doesn't ever seem to stop. We'll get to all of that in the next few weeks, but today it all starts with the drama in his family. First, let's do some quick background here. Joseph was one of 12 sons. His father was Jacob. Now, Jacob's story was really complicated. He fell in love with a woman named Rachel, but was tricked into marrying her sister, Leah, instead. Eventually, Jacob would also marry Rachel. See, I told you, a lot of strange drama. And plot twist, Rachel, the wife Jacob loved the most, couldn't have children, while Leah could. Meanwhile, Jacob fathered other children with 2 other women. It wasn't until much later that Rachel, his favorite, gave birth to Joseph, who would become Jacob's favorite son. So this family with one father, 4 mothers and 12 sons had some tension. This is where we pick up Joseph's story. In Genesis 37, we read that Jacob made a special robe just for Joseph, a physical reminder of how much more his dad loved him than the other brothers. Naturally, the brothers despised him for this. So, did Joseph wisely hang back, keep quiet, and avoid drawing attention to himself? No. One day, while the brothers were hanging out, Joseph said this. "Listen to this dream," he said. "We were out in the field tying up bundles of grain. Suddenly, my bundle stood up, and your bundles all gathered around and bowed low before mine." Talk about not reading the room! This dream wasn't about grain, it was about power. Specifically, it was about Joseph being over his brothers. His brothers responded, "So you think you will be our king, do you? Do you actually think you will reign over us?" And they hated him all the more because of his dreams and the way he talked about them. Later, Joseph had another dream that upped the ante. This dream involved the sun, the moon, and the stars bowing down to him. It was the same message, but this time it included his parents as well. Can you imagine the tension in this family? 1 dad, 4 moms, a dozen boys, with the favorite son telling people he's having visions of everyone bowing down to him. Clearly, many toes were being stepped on. But Joseph seemingly didn't consider the people on the receiving end of his words. He didn't seem to consider how his behavior could affect those around him. And Joseph's family behaved the same way. All Joseph's brothers could see was how the whole situation affected them, the unfairness and the injustice of it all. Joseph receiving the robe was like being given a $10,000 bonus at Christmas, while his brothers were enrolled in the Jelly of the Month Club. It was obviously unfair. The truth is, these few verses are about more than some strange dreams in a coat. They're about how the tension in the family was never dealt with, and that tension was left to grow. We're still reading this story today for a reason. Why? To show us that family has always been complicated. To encourage us to pay attention to how our actions and even our situations affect the people we live with. To remind us that tension left unresolved will never just go away. In fact, that tension will usually escalate into something bigger. Considering that, what could everyone in Joseph's family have done differently? Well, Joseph could have seen himself as one person in a large family, not the center of it. The dad could have recognized how his favoritism was impacting everybody. The brothers could have chilled out a little bit on their grudge with Joseph. The family could have ignored Joseph's dreams and not allowed their insecurity to control them. But that's not what happened in the story. Joseph's family drama really isn't that different than our own. No matter who you are, you have a role in your family. So, $1,000,000 question, how do we play our role in our family well? How do we even start? What do we do when we don't know what to do? Well, first, we can start by paying attention to how we see ourselves. Do you think or act like you're better than people in your house or in your family? Maybe. Let's be honest, we probably do. So what would it look like to treat people in your house as equal or maybe even more important than yourself? Think about how your words and your actions contribute to the tone and temperature of the house. Are you improving it or are you making it more tense? Then decide what you want your role to be. Pay attention to how you affect your family. Then choose how you'll treat them. If you aren't sure where to begin, take a look at this passage in a letter Paul wrote to the church at Philippi. In some ways, these people worked and lived like a family, so they were trying to figure out how to live together. In this letter, Paul wrote this: "Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of the others. In your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus, who being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness. And being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross." Paul wrote, Jesus sets the example here. And what did Jesus do? He gave up the privileges that came with being God. He deserved to be treated like God, but didn't require that treatment from people. He chose to serve and have compassion on people even when they didn't deserve it. Paul was reminding the Philippian church and us to be that kind of person with those around us. Then, maybe hardest of all, we need to invite someone else to speak into how we treat our family. Honestly, it's nearly impossible to see the role we play in our family, but others around us can see it. By asking them, they can help us see ourselves and our families with a different perspective. And that perspective can make all the difference. This is why we have small groups. We all need people around us who can know what's really going on in our family and then help us figure out what to do when we don't know what to do. Imagine for a second if everybody in your family did this. What would happen if everyone paid attention to how they affect everyone else? What would it do for your relationship with the people who live at your house? What would it do for the general level of tension or peace at your house? And what if it started with you?